A pleasant day, everyone. Today, I will be interviewing the very beautiful and smart Ms Marivic Gutierrez. Hi, Ms Marivic. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm doing great too. So, when did you start your teaching career?
So that was April 2008. So it's been
5 years.
5 years. That's right.
How long have you been handling the EPP department?
So I've been the coordinator of EPP Livingstone for 2 years already.
2 years. So, what are the different strategies that you are using inside your class? Like the techniques, materials, and the stuffs?
That's a very good question. So basically we have different materials for different levels. So that's from beginner to intermediate and up to advanced. So our curriculum is very flexible. So we match the students' materials with their needs and with the result of the placement test, and also the teacher's evaluation on the first few days of the students. In terms of the techniques and strategies, each teacher has his or her own style of teaching, but we have something in common. I conducted a seminar before based on the course that I took, which is TESOL. By the way, TESOL means Teaching English to Speakers of Other Languages. So in planning and executing our lesson plans, we have what we call the ESA framework, or ESA.
So what does this ESA stands for?
ESA, E for engage, S for study, and A for activate. So I'll explain briefly. E for engage. So this is like a warm-up in sports. So we arouse the students' interest and attention and get them involved before we start the lesson proper. And the examples would be music, photos, stories, short discussion, and Q&A. And then after that, we'll go on to the next stage, which is the study stage. So this is the lesson proper. So we discuss and explain the language to the students. And then the last part or last stage would be the activate stage. So activate, this is the application of what they've learned and what they know in a fun and interesting way. So examples would be role play, interviews, or some games.
So it's good that you're involving fun in your studies. So E for engage, S for study, and A for activate.
Yes, you're a very good student.
Yes. So in EPP, you are handling both foreigners and local students. What are their similarities in terms of coping with your lessons?
Well, our students, these are students whose first language isn't English. So let's define the term local, because technically speaking, we've never had a local student. Local meaning pure Filipinos who were born and raised here in the Philippines and can speak Filipino fluently. But we've had half Filipino students. They were born and or raised in another country, but they speak in Filipino fluently, and also the native language of the country where they came from. So for this purpose, let's define those students as local, because they're half Filipinos and they can speak Filipino fluently. So for locals and foreigners, their challenges lie usually in vocabulary, listening, spontaneity, because they have very limited vocabulary, and they got used to and introduced to the sounds of their native language, and these sounds are different from English, and which make them struggle in listening and pronunciation. And also they have difficulty expressing their ideas both in oral and written form, because they didn't get a chance to practice English in their
So these people includes Chinese?
Yes, Chinese,
Koreans,
Japanese, German. We've had Taiwanese also before. Well, actually, anyone whose first language isn't English and they want to learn that language.
So after knowing their similarities, let's tackle their differences. So what's their differences among the local and foreign students?
Differences. Well, they all came from different countries with different native languages. So these languages, they have different sounds, intonations, and also word order in sentence construction. So, like example, Chinese intonation and sounds are different from the sounds in Japanese, also in Hangul. And also an example would be when Koreans construct their sentences in Hangul, they start with the verb
First.
and then the subject, which is the exact opposite in English.
Yes, in English it's subject first and then verb.
Yeah, so usually they're tempted or they tend to translate or direct translation. So they start the sentence with the verb and then the subject, which is wrong.
So in your teaching career, what are the different problems you have encountered? Like, is there any language barrier, cultural barriers, and how did you deal with them?
Well, any issues would be something that's very normal. And in 5 years of working or teaching in Livingstone, I've encountered a lot and different kinds of challenges and issues already. But I think one that's very important is the cultural differences. You know, they came from different countries, and culture is something that's very sensitive. It's something that's very important to us. So it's the job of the teacher to be aware and sensitive with these differences. And I'd like to give you some examples. So for Koreans, age is something that is highly considered in almost all their interactions. But you know, in language centers like us, we cannot avoid to have students older than us. So we try to be as professional as we should. And we don't call them by their first names. We use Mr. Or Ms. or Mrs. so they won't get offended. And another observation that I had was most Koreans, they're night people.
Meaning night people, meaning they are active at night?
Yes, exactly. While Japanese are morning people, so meaning they're very active in the morning, while they are...
So they're totally different.
Yes, yes. So Koreans, they feel tired in the morning, and then at the latter part of the day, they feel very active, which is the exact opposite for Japanese. So it's a challenge, and it's the job of the teacher to keep them motivated and keep them interested all throughout the day. And another one is, you know, Koreans, they like hitting each other, like physically, like this, or pat, or very. It's just not a pat.
Yeah.
It's something. It's really hit on the back. That's very strongly. You know, other nationalities, they don't like that, and they get surprised when they see something like that. So sometimes it's a start of a fight or a problem in school. So as they say, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. So our school, we set some rules. Like for example, no slaving in class, no hitting, no bringing of sharp objects so not to hurt anyone. So stuff like that. And then if problems arise, well, these issues are communicated among us teachers, also to their advisors.
So that's good that teachers have this communication, or they sit and talk about the problem.
Yes, that's very important. And we also communicate to the parents or their guardians, because they should know. And you know, the teachers and parents, we should, you know, cooperate and work together.
So what kind of activities do you organize in school that can help the students enhance their English skills?
Okay, we have one is show and tell. From the title itself, show, they will show something and they would tell. So they would choose a topic, anything that they like, but it's like a teaching demo. So they would show us how to do something while they're speaking or explaining to us how to do it. So it's like a 5 or 10 minute speech. They have to memorize and they have to prepare all the materials. And then next one would be scrapbook making. So
Is this about a photo? Photo.
yes, exactly. It's the
Taking
same
photos.
as the scrapbook that we know. So they will choose also a topic that they like, and then they would collect 10 to 15 photos related to the subject, and then they would write or provide captions of 1 to 2 sentences, and they would present their scrapbook to us, and they should memorize their speech. And another one would be eat out and shop around. And this is something fun because they would go to the mall and then they would shop.
Do you go with them?
Yes, we shop around. And then they would eat in a restaurant. So they have the chance to practice practice English, the expressions in shopping and also in ordering food. And they would face, real people, and they're in the real world.
That's good that they're interacting with the outside world.
Yes, not just in the classroom. So
Yes.
it's a good experience.
So is teaching your dream job?
That's an interesting question because when I was young, no. Actually, when I was young, I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I was sure of what I didn't want to be.
A teacher.
A teacher, exactly. But in 2008, it changed. I realized that teaching is my dream job.
So what's the feeling of teaching English to your students?
The feeling. I think there's no perfect word or adjective to describe the feeling. But just imagine this. You love writing, and you've been writing for 5 years. And you've been changing people's lives because of the books that you write. Or you are a basketball player. You love basketball. And finally, you're playing for the NBA. So just imagine that. And that's it. That's the feeling.
So last question. What are the tips that you can suggest to our viewers on how to be an effective teacher?
Okay, that's a very good question. It's also something that I want to share to everyone. So, an effective teacher, well, I have 4 points. This is something that I learned from the course that I took and also from my experience. As you know, I wasn't really trained, formally educated as a teacher. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in business management, but I found out that this is my passion. So first is personal traits. The teacher, an effective teacher, should have warmth, rapport, and enthusiasm when teaching. That's very important. So the teacher should also motivate the students and well organized, prepared, and flexible. And this, as I mentioned earlier, the problems in cultural differences. So the teacher must be sensitive and aware of these differences. Okay, so that's a personal trait. Okay, and then next one is teaching expertise. So how can you teach something if you don't have the knowledge? So basically, you should have the fundamental understanding of the language system of English. And an effective teacher must also have self-assessment or self-evaluation every now and then of his or her performance in teaching and also with his or her lessons, because that's very important. And the teacher should also find ways to refine or improve his or her teaching techniques. So we're now down to the third one, the teaching techniques. So the teacher should plan and execute effective lesson plans. He or she should also use a variety of learning activities. That's very important. And the teacher must also provide effective and constructive feedback and error correction with his or her students, because you don't want to humiliate anyone in the classroom, because otherwise they will not talk anymore and they will not try. And a teacher should also give clear instructions
That the students should understand.
Yes, and also he or she should know how to present the lesson clearly and simply for the students, because this is a new language for them. So the teacher must discuss the lesson as simple as she can. Okay, so we have the
Personal trait,
Mhm.
and then
Teaching expertise,
and teaching
techniques. Okay, and fourth one, I said 4 points. So the fourth one would be the student or learner management. So in the classroom, maybe there are like 5 or 6 or more. The teacher must be always in control because you are the teacher.
And it's not going to be the other way around.
Yes, so some students, they would challenge you and then they would try to dominate you, ask you to do what they want. So that's wrong. So an effective teacher is always in control, and he or she should be firm when necessary, yet always kind and respectful. So this teacher must have or give a friendly, relaxed, and safe environment. As I mentioned earlier, no one should be humiliated. It's a safe environment. It's a safe learning environment for the student. You don't want them to be scared with you or in the class. And then you should, or the teacher must promote creativity and spontaneity, because that's really your goal. You want them to speak and express themselves, spontaneously and fluently. And also you want to promote cooperation, interaction, yes, and teamwork, because that's very important. And last but not the least, the teacher, an effective teacher, must love teaching. If you love what you're doing, if you love teaching, then everything will fall on their proper places. So that's the very important one.
Thank you so much, Ms Marivic Gutierrez. I hope you learned something from our informative interview. Thank you for watching.